Alright, how's it guys? I'm back again. As I promised, I said I'm gonna talk a bit about sandpapering on the next video. And that would maybe be the next power tool that you purchase. But you know, everybody's not telling me I must make this video short. But it's so bloody difficult making the video short because you want people to understand exactly, because once you understand what it is you're doing from a technical or an engineering perspective, then it makes it so much easier to do the right thing, or to, if you have a difficulty, to overcome that difficulty. And I'm just like that, man. I try to understand the stuff. But anyway, in keeping it short, I'm just gonna run you through what it is. When you're sandpapering something, right, essentially you are making it flat, right? So you'll hear some people refer to when they're sanding a car, when they're flattening it down, because the surface of most things, when you enlarge it, it's kind of bumpy like that, right? Most things are bumpy, and you're really just making it flat. When you're taking off that little peaks and things, and if there's indentations, it's a bit more difficult, but you're making it flat. And when it's flat, you can imagine you're going to use less paint or varnish, whatever, on a flat surface than you would when the paint has to go in there, etc., etc. And the ultimate result is when you put a layer of varnish on this, it might do that in there and that in there and so on. But when it's flat, then your varnish can be flat. So ideally, you want to sandpaper something smooth so that it looks better. You don't see any scratches. That could represent a scratch also. And you save on material, and it's just better when you do sandpaper something nice and flat. Okay, so that's now as far as I can probably go with on the technical side of things. There's just one other thing. When you're sandpapering, especially when you're sandpapering solid wood, okay, it's very important to understand that you sandpaper with a grain when you're doing it manually. And that is because there's a natural lines or grooves that's going with this grain, as you can imagine, okay? And the minute I go across it, it's going to be so visible. If I make a thin line in that way, it's like if I were to draw for you now these lines like this, right? And I incidentally make a thin line in there, you're not even going to notice it. But the minute I make a line like that, then it's now immediately visible. So that's why when you sandpaper wood with a grain, you sandpaper with a grain, right? So that it's easier, and because it's less noticeable when you do get a scratch, because you're using some grit-like substance to smooth it off, and the grit-like substance is going to create scratches, fine scratches, but the idea is to remove peaks and valleys from the wood. Okay, all right, now that that is done, machine wise, now with sandpapering, it's not like drills or jigsaws. Sandpapering, you get a variety of machines. If you're starting off very basic, you can go with a basic sandpapering machine like this one. Should actually have one, it's pretty cool. But you hear them talking about orbital sanders. Orbital just means that the sandpaper was in a circular motion, and then you get random orbital, which means that it does a circular motion as well as the whole thing turning. So it's spinning and also going. So this paper will spin, but it's very minute, you can't see, but it's also the whole thing is doing that. So that's where the random comes in. So that helps to increase effectiveness of the sanding. Now, even when you're using a machine which is doing a circular motion and you're sandpapering a piece of wood with grain, you still want to go with the grain like that. Okay. What's nice about this machine is that they sell sandpaper most places, the Velcro stick-on paper, and it's very convenient. This is too big for this one because it's for the bigger machine, but they just stick on, and then you can sandpaper. So understanding sandpaper grits, the next thing. So at the back of all the paper you'll get it'll normally say P something. It's a 60, so it's a 60 grit, which means it's coarser. So the lower the number, the more coarse the paper is. So when you have something that's very rough and you're starting with there, then you want to start with maybe a P40 and move up to 220 or 320 With wood, we generally don't need to go past 220 grit, but with metal and really beautiful finishes, high gloss finishes like in cars, they go as much as 2000 when it comes to sandpapering. You can go, I mean, up to 1000 with wood as well and get as smooth a finish as possible, but it's not so necessary. Alright, so that is the paper. Now, the paper is essentially just a sheet of paper with little balls on it of glass filings. That's different sizes and different consistencies or different amounts per square inch amount of balls. So you can use the same paper. What I like about this is you can use the same paper, put it on a little block. I mean, this is a special tool, but you can have a block of wood, put it on there, hold it like that, and that makes sandpapering so much easier. And when you have the cushioning underneath, it helps. When you have a slight cushioning, not too soft, but that makes you, when you're sanding something, that your surface that you're sanding is flat. So if I take my hand, then I've got bumps there. That's going to cause it to create bumps on the surface that I'm sanding as well. But ideally, you want to sandpaper with a block rather than your free hand. Most cases. Alright, so random orbital sander. This one has got it's got a speed control, so you sandpaper a bit slower, some cases, and a bit faster. Most cases I just use it on maximum speed, to be brutally honest. So you don't really need slower, speed control on a sanding machine. Although some technical police will say you do actually need it, but I don't really use it that much. Then just on and off, it's got a nice handle grip. Remember, when you're sanding, it's the same like most tools. Let the tool do the work and not use so much. You need to put downward pressure, but not too much. And don't use it like, you have the machine on and do that, because then you're going to create scratches. So put it on, let it do its circular motion, and then you move it slowly in the direction of the hood. Right, so that's a nice basic one to start with. The diameter of this is, there's a standard, I think, 110 millimeter diameter. And then the papers come in a 150 as well, if you're doing bigger areas. This is the 150. Then if I show you here in the background, I've got a bigger one. So this is obviously more expensive machine that takes a bigger paper. It's got higher speed. It's even got a rougher function, which it creates a bigger circular motion, and it does more coarse sanding. Then you have this little mouse machine. I don't particularly like this mouse machine if you're buying it to the first one. She doesn't have a circular motion. It does a vibrating thing, and it's not as effective as this one in terms of sanding. And then you don't get these triangle papers everywhere, every hardware, where the circular ones you get everywhere. But this shape machine, the mouse sander, they come call it, you get it in Bosch makes them, and all the other IOB makes things like this. This one's also got a speed control. Alright, but I don't even use it that much, to be brutally honest. But the way it's handy is when you sandpaper into corners just now, because the circle one, if you go into the corner, it just does that, and then you got to do the rest by hand. But it's a nice machine to have, right? And then for very coarse sanding, they use it for floors and whatever. They use the big belt sander. So that's now, it turns it at high speed, and the belts that you use for your floors and that big industrial machine, you use it to, if your wood is very rough and you need to smooth it off, and you basically have to do more hard work in terms of getting it flat, then you move to a belt sander. But for restoring things and most fine sanding, then this sort of machine works as long as you just work through your papers nicely. You go from start with your 40, go up to 60, then 150, whatever. You buy a nice range. The spaces between your grits should be about like 50 or 60. So you start off with, like I said, 40, go to 60, then 120. That makes your job a lot easier. Alright, so that's as much as I can say for sandpapering. As I said, I'm not trying to keep the video short, but it's already 9 minutes into it. And then hopefully we'll soon move on to something more exciting, like I want to make something and show you guys how to make something that's a bit more exciting than all this talk about the tools. but soon we'll move on to something. This is also good practice for me. So yeah, see you guys again. Hopefully that helps in terms of sandpapering, and be good.